Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. A retired elementary school reading and language arts teacher, Valerie A. was writing short stories by second grade, and she's always kept a journal. Now, at long last, she's published her first book, The Gumbly-Goop. Now, where did this come from?
I actually wrote this story for a graduate school course 34 years ago when I was getting my master's degree. It was just a creative writing course. And I set out to just write a story, and I had fun with it because my childhood cat, Gabby, was my inspiration because she was a very unique kitty cat, and she had a very unique voice with a funny meow, which is incorporated into the story.
I wish we could hear it.
Well, it's in the book. When I read it to others, and when anybody else would read it out loud, you'll have to hear it. So her meow was not a meow or a mew or anything. It went mack with a little k at the end. We all say she didn't meow, she macked.
It's funny.
And children are brutally honest. And I learned from reading stories to elementary school children, I could tell when they were engaged or not in a book. And sometimes they would flat out say, do we have to read this? Or this is boring. Or they'd slouch in their seats and I have to always tell them to pay attention. So I thought, well, let me see if this story will pass muster with my students, because if it's a bad story, they'll let me know. So I did read it to them without telling them I wrote it. And as I said, no illustration, so it was just the story. And they were very engaged and laughed at all the right times. And I actually had them draw illustrations for me after I read the story. And their illustrations were extremely detailed, so I knew they were listening to the entire story. So from that point on, and plus I did get a very nice A+ on the story for my graduate course. So I did start to dream about it actually becoming a published book. But I never really did anything with it. My mother, she's passed now, but she just wanted me to make that a book. And years later, I took a publishing course, a writing course, and it was correspondence. And just in hopes of seeing if I could get it published. But again, I didn't really do anything with it. Their focus was for magazines, children's magazines, and just something inside me said, I don't want this to just be in a magazine.
Right.
My true dream would be to have it become a book. But then my teaching career took over. I was hired by a school district in New Jersey. I just became very involved in my teaching career, and I just didn't have the time or the energy to put into the book. So I never forgot about it. It was always tucked away in a drawer, or when I moved several times, and the story always came with me.
Aww.
And I promised myself one day when I retired, I would look into getting it published again. And about a year into my retirement, I said it's time for me to keep that promise to myself. So I submitted the manuscript to a publishing company, Fulton Books. And the reason I chose that was because the universe works in mysterious ways. About 5 years before I did retire, I saw that a teacher in a different school, but in my school district, he had published a book with Fulton Books Publishing. And I was so excited for him, and something inside me said, yes, he can do it, I can do it. And it gave me some renewed hope. So upon my retirement, like I said, about a year into it, it had been weighing on me that you need to keep this promise to yourself. Just do it. And I thought, I'll try Fulton Books. And I submitted my manuscript and was beyond pleasantly surprised when it was accepted. And from the time the manuscript was accepted to it becoming a physically published book, that took about 8 months or so.
So what's the story?
The Gumbly Goop.
Wait, what's Gumbly Goop?
So, well, my childhood cat, her nickname that I nicknamed her was the Gumbly Goop because she was a tortoiseshell. They're called torties. They have mottled markings just of like browns and oranges and blacks and sort of all mottled and splotchy. And some are very beautiful and some can look not quite so beautiful, which was the case of my cat, Gabby. And some people would look at her and just say how strange looking she was. And so when I created the story with her as the title character, I used her nickname, the Gumbly Goop. And I just thought it was a fun, childlike, silly name that would catch readers' attention, especially children, of course. So the story is about a wizard, a kind but bumbling wizard. His name's Winslow, who feels like a failure every time his spells don't work out as expected. But what he doesn't see is how much joy his imperfect spells still bring to others. He only focuses on the fact that his spells weren't perfect. He's very hard on himself. And one day, he just decides to give up magic altogether because he just doesn't like failing every time his spells don't turn out the way he wants them to. But ironically, what seems to be his greatest failure of all, Winslow learns that he is a success because he needs to use his magic to help save a little child in the village. The setting is it's like a medieval type village, and a little child gets a little disease called the sad disease, but it's actually a monumental disease because she is going to perish if she doesn't get cured. And the only way for her to get cured is to laugh. And no matter what the villagers try to do to make her laugh, including a clown and gestures and everything possible, she just will not laugh. So each passing day, she's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And then Winslow learns about her illness, and he's so kind. He's a very kind individual that he wants to help. He always wants to help. So he knows he has to go see this child, Chloe, and try to do something to help cure her. And the other thing is she never spoke to anyone, but she did speak to Winslow, which I hope children can pick up on, that's how kind he is. She could open up to him.
Yeah.
And she asked for a cat, and there were no cats in the entire village. So he would have to use his magic, and he was scared of failing, and he had this great fear of failure, but he wanted his love for this little girl and wanting to help her overruled his fear of failing. So he says he will try to conjure up a cat for her, and he wants to make this perfect cat, of course. And when I wrote this story 34 years ago, there was a commercial on TV that was the Fancy Feast cat. And the Fancy Feast cat, which is a brand of cat food, it was just this beautiful white fluffy cat, like a Persian white fluffy cat with blue eyes, just beautiful. So in my mind, when I wrote the story, that's what Winslow wanted to create. And he says, I will create this beautiful white fluffy cat for you, Chloe. So, of course, he makes an incantation and he tries to conjure up this beautiful white fluffy cat. And, of course, he fails. And instead, what comes out after a huge puff of gray smoke appears what I call the Gumbly Goop, which inspired by my cat, Gabby, who was mostly black with orange splotches and beige nose with speckled dots and big ears. And everybody that looked at the Gumbly Goop thought, oh, what's that? That's quite strange. And that's what people would do for my cat, Gabby. they would look at my cat, and I would think they were very rude, and they would say, "That's a strange-looking cat. What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a cat." And then she would open her mouth and make the mack sound, and that would make people laugh. So Winslow had created the Gumbly Goop, and he felt like the biggest failure of all, and he wanted to take it away. But Chloe wanted to hear the cat meow, and when it did, it let out that loud mack, and that at the end. And she let out a little smile. She showed a little smile, and then by the end of the book, the cat, the Gumbly Goop, macks again and makes Chloe just laugh and laugh and laugh, and that cures her. So at the end, although it was a failure for Winslow, he really finally realized that he is a success.
He saved the day. That's so cute.
He saved the day, which was ironic. Through what he thought was his greatest failure of all, he learns that he is a success.
So can you go back to your school district now and say, "Hey, I wrote a book"?
Well, it's very funny that you asked that. I am going to share my book. I am doing an author visit to share my book with an assembly of grades 1st through 3rd.
Oh.
And then I will be going into different 4th and 5th grade classrooms to share the book and then make it a little more mature to talk about the writing process and show children the importance of word choice and writing with your own voice and not being afraid. And just like Winslow, not being afraid to fail and just keep working. Because children think that they have to write the first time and it's done. And they don't understand. They get offended when the teacher makes suggestions about revisions and they don't want to work on it. But I will show them that writing takes lots of revisions and nobody really should be happy with their very first draft.
Right. Writing is rewriting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about getting your voice heard, but you have to choose words wisely.
Yes. So you're still teaching, sounds to me, Valerie, and I think you're on a really good track.
Yeah, I can't get the teacher out of me.
That's okay. I mean, listen, we all have our lot in life. That's what you do. Are you going to keep writing?
Well, I have several stories that I wrote over the years that I think I would one day want to at least choose one.
Right.
But right now I'm concentrating on this book because I just got it published.
Okay.
So
well, you go. You're an inspiration. Yeah. You really are.
Well, thanks. I feel that when I go to my school and I do plan to do author visits at other schools, I do hope that I can inspire children to, as a reading teacher, I wanted to inspire the love of not just reading, but also writing. And like I said, the love of words. And as an author, I'm still, especially when I visit children, I still hope to instill that love of reading and writing.
You did a great job. Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you so much for calling, and I appreciate your words of encouragement.
All right.
I can take that to heart, believe me.
Good. All right. Our next author has a name everyone always mispronounces, but when you do pronounce the name correctly, it lends itself to some creative expression that Rich Y. Lee and his son Brandon D. Lee took full advantage of to write The Friendly Forest, an American adventure in adverbs and adjectives. Now, I know you're a dentist, but you know what? Some might read your book and think you're an English teacher.
You know what's funny is that was probably one of my worst subjects growing up. So I appreciate just, the kind comment, I guess.
So where did you come up with this idea?
So actually, it's interesting that you said that about being like an English teacher. So my son, when he had gotten into one of these, it's called Talented and Gifted classes in the city, but he got in like I guess in the 1st grade. So in kindergarten, he was in a different school, and I guess the program wasn't wasn't too advanced, I guess, even for kindergartners. So when he went to the first grade, he realized that he was, well, we realized that he was having some trouble with like reading and writing. Like he wasn't like as up to speed as some of the other kids. So then we kind of just came up with the idea one day, just driving. We were actually going to a concert, and I picked him up from school, and it just that 5 hour drive to the concert. Actually, we were just brainstorming some ideas on how to kind of improve his writing skills, and also like do something fun that could like honor our surname and our parents and stuff, and people that in our lives, I guess. So
Your name is spelled L-Y.
it is yes, it's spelled L-Y.
So everybody called you Lai, Richard Lai.
Yes, exactly.
And the correct pronunciation is Lee.
Yes.
So in your book, you switch up the words by adding ly.
Mm-hmm. As you notice, I'm Rich Lee, I guess the rabbit that's kind of on the adventure, and Brandon is actually the dragon. He and my first dog Muffin was is devotedly the dog. So I guess we're the three main characters in the book. I'm just kind of lost in the forest, what represents America, I guess. It's a little bit autobiographical, I guess, for me, like some of the journey I've taken, because I wasn't born here, but I was lucky enough, my family was lucky enough to immigrate here when I was 3 years old from Vietnam. So a lot of it is also honoring our country, obviously, with the way, like we kind of put I mean, the subtitle, I guess. So, like I said, it's a little bit autobiographical. So I'm lost basically because, I feel like life is obviously a journey. And I keep, how people always assume you seem like, I guess I always felt like I was always searching for something. I'm always kind of looking for something that I don't have in my life versus appreciating what I do have in my life. So the journey is me kind of lost in this forest, and devotedly, my loyal dog is the one that's looking for me, because she was the one that really, I guess, aside from my parents obviously and my brother, I kind of feel like she was the only one that has ever given me like the unconditional love. So that's why she's I highlight her in the book. She's kind of like the hero that's will eventually save me along with my son. So yeah, so it's like chasing this rainbow, looking at the greener grass, and just realizing along the way that when you're at your most lost in life, sometimes just looking around and realizing that our lives are so much better than most have it, and it's really, and of course, honoring my parents, because they're the reasons that I even have a chance at a new life out here. And, of course, like I said, a great country, the opportunities, so it's just different aspects of how things worked out in my life.
This is so sweet. How old are the children that you want to read this book?
Initially, it was supposed to be like younger. Obviously, like I was helping my son who was going into the first grade at like 6 years old, I guess. But then as I'm writing it, it's a little bit more grown up. So I would say anywhere between like 8 and 12, or 8 to maybe even a little older than that. Because I've had some of my nieces like read it, and even some of the adults were like, some of like they were just kind of like, it's I guess I'm hoping that even adults get to enjoy it a little bit, because there's obviously there's some there's some stories within the journey, I guess, that also comes out that's more adult.
How old is your son now?
My son is 11 and a half.
So it took.
And believe it, I can't believe how long it's taken. Yeah, it's been almost 5 years, actually, almost to the day, actually, that we've been working on it.
What does he think of the book?
I think he was excited. I mean, it's funny because it got drawn out a little bit, because when we finally, found Fulton Books to help publish, it just, I guess every time I said, "Oh, it's almost there, he was kind of like, "Okay, when's it happening?" But he was excited when it was finally, kind of finalized. So the end goal really for me was obviously something that Brandon and I share together, like I said, and it's kind of hopefully leave something that because both my parents have passed away, so that's why in the book they're kind of in the heaven area. But anyway, it's kind of like I said, just honoring my family and then the surname, like, so it's kind of like one of those things where, so I never even thought of really the marketing and all that stuff. Because a lot of it, like the reality is, in the end, like I said, we have a good life. I'm very fortunate. It's not like we don't need money or anything. It's just more like actually what I really wanted, my intentions was to hopefully use our book to raise money for either some veterans charities or even law enforcement, first responders kind of thing. That was the whole kind of idea behind it, that to do something maybe for the community. I just haven't figured out that aspect out of that just yet, so.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would head right for the local library. Do a little book talk on how you came up with this idea. Your process. I know you're busy. You're a dentist. You must be so busy, but let your community know. Somebody should do an article on you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, actually, it's funny. I have a local library right down the road from me. It's within 5 minutes, so I might just do that. Like you said, unfortunately, life does keep me busy, and
Yeah.
because I don't have Brandon out with me all the time, it kind of obviously. But they do have weekend hours, so I might do that. Like because he's usually out with me on like Saturdays, so I think I think the library is open out here on Saturdays, so I should definitely try that.
Does he like the book?
I think he does. I think he's proud of it.
Okay. So how was the process for you?
It was a learning experience. I mean, it was, because a lot of it is very personal and even the illustrations, because we self-illustrated everything. That's why it was a process. I mean, a lot of learning because, like, I didn't realize that, even within the publishing aspect of it, that, vibrant colors, matter. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
using colored pencils and, oh my God, the process of almost redoing everything to make it more colorful and more vibrant, the colors, so it prints well. If anything, that was probably the the most grueling part of it, because I thought I was about to be done, or we were about to be done, it kept having to be sent back for further
Right.
enhancements, I guess. So
Yeah.
so the final cover is actually it's actually a picture of a mural I painted on my wall here. So in the end, it's very satisfying for me. Like I said, it's just something that at least now I know Brandon and I will always have something together that we did. So
That's great. You
yeah.
think you'll keep doing things maybe with your son? Maybe keep writing?
We had already talked about possibly, if this one does okay, then do we already have an idea for the next possible ones? Because I guess obviously there's endless words and that could help, and we have an idea for potentially like a sequel, or just continuing along that lines of
The journey.
the journey. Yes, exactly, because life is a journey, and it doesn't just end when you reunite. I guess we have more chapters to write, I guess, together. So
Right. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, Rich.
thank you for the interview. I really appreciate it.
Maria Dello is a fairly well-known nutritionist featured on national TV and radio over the years. She's done her fair share of writing about humans and now about dogs too. In her children's book, Theodore Says Dogs Are People Too.
Basically, I'm a nutritionist. I'm a nutritionist for about 24 years. Very involved with organizations and, talking to different schools and athletes and just loving every minute of it. I intertwine nutrition with supplementation. I always say I'm holistic, but I'm very natural and realistic. So back in 2019, I had lost my dog, which was named Prince. And then I wasn't quite ready to get a dog. So I just said, let me, take it easy and just kind of, you want to go through the process of mourning and all. And during that duration, then the pandemic just had started, and we were all on lockdown. And then I noticed everyone was getting dogs and all the rescues were empty. And I said, wow, this is great. This is awesome. So I kind of got involved with rescuing, and then I started, I've always been involved with training and nutrition for dogs. And, my last dog, I was very interested in giving him holistic care, such as vitamins and supplementation. And I was very much into that. But then as time went on, people went back to work and back to life. And I said, wow, what are they doing with their dogs? And then it was like, oh, I left my dog home for 12 hours and she ripped up everything. I'm like, no, you can't do that. Dogs they're going to miss you. So I always grew up with animals, and I knew just by looking into their eyes that they had a soul. If you ever look deep into an animal's eyes, they blink and they look at you and they stare at you and they have feelings. They're happy and sad and all that. And then I said, wow, this is incredible. So I wanted to make an imprint. And where shall I start? I said, well, it's best to start with kids, because how do we learn things just in general? We start young, right? And that's that imprint that we should be learning, that dogs have feelings and they need care most of all. So where should we start? Where should we make that imprint? And I felt children we'd have the most success with at a younger age, learning these habits that follow us throughout our lives. And lo and behold, I got my Theodore, a German Shepherd. He's a West German Shepherd, and through raising him I got him at 8 weeks, and raising Theo, guess what? They bite, right? They nip, they bark. They may even have an accident here and there. But and guess what else? You get to have a pretty sturdy vacuum when you have a dog.
Yeah.
But we learn, just like with anything, it takes dedication and commitment and responsibility. And it's, you have to learn that, hey, they're not always perfect, just like kids, right? They're not always perfect, but we're going to love them, and we're going to train them and give them the best care. And the success rate of keeping them will be much greater if we put the time and commitment into our dogs, at a young age. And I just felt like with teaching children, and through my dog, I can show people, hey, it can be done. So I decided, through the dedication with my own dogs, that I can set a message, just make a difference. And so that was my intention.
So what's the book about?
It's about Theodore. He goes on, all these days with his family. He gets to go to grandma's house, and he goes to the doctor because he has a tummy ache. His grandma gave him a cookie. And then he goes on all kinds of road trips, and he goes for training, and he goes for walks with his mom. Just a beautiful, invaluable story about how Theo is just a part of the family. And you see Theodore sitting at the dinner table and he's eating, a healthy meal, and he's drinking water, and he's walking with his mom, and all the daily tasks that we need to do with a dog that, needs care. It's not something like a novelty, and you get a dog and you say, that's nice, let me just get a dog for our own needs. It's, it's a pretty serious commitment. And I just feel that with that commitment comes so many benefits too, because if you can kind of stick it out in the beginning, and if you ever had a puppy, everyone knows, they're not perfect. They may whine and they may bark, but guess what? Later on, you're going to have a spectacular dog, and they are, really the family members. But through this journey with Theodore, as he says, dogs are people too. They are part of the family, but there's more to it, because guess what? There's health benefits of owning a dog.
You got that right. They train dogs to go in and be with patients. So it brings down their heart rate, blood pressure.
They're great for depression, anxiety. I mean, even if you, this new study was shown that even if you had a cardiac event, do you know your survival rate's even higher than getting out of the hospital with dog ownership? So it's really amazing about the dog benefits of having one. So if you could stick it out.
We were talking earlier before the interview started about you can tell whether your dog is a Republican or a Democrat. Is that true, Maria?
Oh, yes.
You can tell.
I mean, I can tell because Theodore, he doesn't like to just scramble and run all over the place. And, he likes to walk, in a structured way. He doesn't whine and beg for things just for habits, when he comes over, he sits down properly. So he's pretty structured, and I could tell he's a Republican, but I'm kind of his mom, so I can tell that. But I could tell a difference between a Democrat dog. Sometimes they'll be barking and whining just for no reason, right? They want things for no reason.
Is that a Democrat dog?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And what's a Republican dog?
Well, a Republican dog, like I said, will come over nicely and sit down in front of you, and they're sort of just more structured, right? A Democrat dog will bark and whine for they want everything. They want all the treats without doing anything, right?
All righty then.
Don't laugh.
All righty. Okay.
Right.
Interesting. All right. So
interesting.
In terms of promoting your book, what are you doing?
I'm writing articles. I will be at Barnes and Nobles. I will also be in Huntington, which is a Nassau County bookstore called New Chapter. It's on April 17th, I believe. So that's exciting. We're doing book interviews. So, yeah, we're trying to put it out there. I think it's a great message for kids and families and anyone that's thinking about getting a dog or has a dog.
How are you getting on NBC? Anybody listening right now, these first-time authors, the hardest part for a lot of them is promoting their book. So you had contacts somewhere, right?
Yes. I mean, I am a nutritionist that have been on certain programs, throughout the years. And, so I think just by doing one thing and then it gets out there and then you promote it, they see it and, kind of a domino effect. But it's taking a pack of gum and seeing what sticks. But, it's every day, but, you have to put it out there. But it is really my passion to spread the word about the book, because I think it's not just because I wrote it. I think it's just, if you ever see the book and the illustrations, it's just adorable. And I've been reading the book now to certain families and children and events. And just when they see this book, the smiles are on their faces. It's amazing. And that makes me feel good because it's like, wow, look at that. The response. I've had parents call me up and say, you don't know, my son has to read the book every night before bedtime. My daughter loves that book. She walks around with it. So it makes me feel good that this book is bringing smiles to children and, and also bonding with their families, right? Some of that's lost nowadays. So I think it's important that just sharing family time, is so important these days.
Thanks so much, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You got it. By day, Khoury Porter is a boxing and martial arts instructor and a New York State certified firearms instructor. In his heart, he's a writer who was inspired by one of his children to write A Father's Love, Words of Wisdom to Live By.
So the book is based off the feelings I was having some years back, looking at my younger son. And I said, if I was to leave this earth, I'm not leaving him with a financial nest egg of any kind that it's significant where he'll just be fine, right? If he just, does what he wants to do in life and just goes about his business in an everyday, situation where he'll have money or whatever. But then I said, well, wait a minute, I have a whole lot of introspect about just life. And I've always been a person that from the time I was a young kid, other people would come and ask me for advice because they're like, Khoury, you're smart. And then after a while, I said, you know what? That is my greatest gift and my greatest talent that God gave me was my intellect. Kind of like Professor X from X-Men, So I said, I could leave that. And I started writing it down. And as I was putting the stuff together, people would always ask me, hey, what are you doing? And then, of course, I would show them and then people would read and go, this is amazing. You should try to publish this. And I said, no, it's actually a manual of life for my for my son.
You said it's your youngest son. Was there something particular about him that inspired you?
Well, because with my oldest son, I was a younger guy, So as I'm getting older, I'll be 48, God willing, in May. I just started looking at things, within the last, let's say 5-7 years, just differently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, the greatest gift you can give your child is opportunity and information. Mentorship is huge. A lot of people don't realize the importance of having mentorship and guidance. And as a parent, you're your child's supreme mentor. So the basis of the book is there's 50 life lessons that are broken up between the 12 chapters. And then most of the book is information that I feel a person, whether they're a young man, a young woman, or just an adult, should have on how to be successful in life on all aspects, physically, mentally, spiritually. Because a lot of people, like, there's a chapter in the book that talks about the power of a father. And in that chapter, I explain on a statistical level how important males are to society and how important males are to the family structure and how important just males are in general. We're not just providers. We're not just playboys. We're not just athletes. We're not just corporate CEOs. We're the fabric of all existence on the planet Earth. Like, everything comes from us, bad and good. Even the evil that is put on this planet is male perpetuated. 98% of the problems on this planet is not by a female, it's by a male. You know what I'm saying? And I stand on that, and that's the truth.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is every war, every negative aspect, any heinous act, if you look at the end of it, usually it's a male.
Oh.
And when you trace, that's just a fact. I was a correction officer for several years as well. And when you look at that and you do your research and you just look at the planet from the existence from the first time somebody committed the first murder, when Cain killed his brother, those were two men. Those weren't two females. So in the book, chapter 1 starts with, life lessons. And then chapter 2 goes into, it's called Let's Get to the Money. Me being an African-American man, Afro-Caribbean man. Chapter 3 is the power of our people. Most people don't realize people like Kenneth Chenault, the former CEO of Amex, American Express, is black. The Lowe's CEO is a black male. The richest person ever on the planet Earth, Mansa Musa from the great kingdom of Mali, was an African. His worth is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, Jeff Bezos and these guys can't even touch his wealth. So that was also an important thing, for me on that, from my culture, that I had to do that. And then chapter 4 gets into other things like, what does school really make me money? And I go over all the different professions that a higher level degree, or even say just a trade school education, can get you. Because a lot of people, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day, they don't realize that people don't fail, they fail to plan. You know what I'm saying? And you may see a person who's in their 40s or 50s working in Walmart as your cashier, who might have so much potential to give to this world, but they made bad choices. But I don't think the end game for a person living their most potential is, serving me a latte at Dunkin' Donuts. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So you want your son to be the best version of himself.
Always. And anybody that's like him, or anybody that's like themselves. You know what I'm saying? I think the book transcends just gender and race and economics. I think anybody who actually will read the book. I've had people read it and, buy it and support it. The small number of people who have, and they're like, wow, this is a lot of powerful information in here. Like, there's stuff in the book that I tell you what you need to buy a home. And in this great day and age of information, there's people who still don't know what they need credit profile wise to buy a home. They don't know they need 2 or 3 years of tax returns to show viable income to be pre-approved for a mortgage. I talk about that in the book. You might want to read it. It's a good book.
How old's your son?
Right now, he's 13. He'll be 14.
Did he read the book?
No, he didn't even read it, and it's dedicated to him.
You think he will read the book?
Yeah. One thing I understand, because I'm an avid book reader. I've been a Barnes and Noble kid, not a library kid, because I like to own my books. I'm into ownership. That's why I own 4 businesses. I'm very successful, it took me a long time to say those words and utter those words, successful or I'm a very humble person.
So the whole point, you want to get to young men. You want to get to young men before they get into trouble or start making bad choices. How do you plan to do that?
Well, one of the things I've done, I've spoken to the CEO of Big Brothers and Sisters of Rockland County, Jillian Ballard, and I proposed that, introducing the book into their organization. That's one way. But the thing about literary works, me being a avid book person, but literary works that change things in society and people don't read them 10, 15, 20 years later. They don't get popular too. You know what I'm saying? And I knew that going into it. I never did this book for profit. I did it for purpose. You know what I'm saying? So it's like You got people that haven't picked up the Bible in 2,000 years, and all of a sudden, yeah, now they're reading it, or the Quran or the Torah or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, shoot, we went into the Vietnam War and we never did our research on Vietnam, and Ho Chi Minh had a book on guerrilla warfare that was sitting in West Point explaining exactly what he would do to any nation that would infiltrate Vietnam. You get what I'm saying? But did we read it? No.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Did anybody open? Nope. Didn't care. Didn't do any research until it was too late and our boys were coming home in bags. You know what I'm saying? So it's like most information that's powerful that people need, they don't really take to it until a bunch of people go, yo, you know what? That helped me. You know, I actually read something that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, look at this guy, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power. I read that book back in 98 when it first came out. Now, 20 some odd years later, people are on his book. Robert Kiyosaki, all these different people that produced, you know, Og Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world. You know, there's a whole bunch of books I could give you that I personally have read that people know, you know, Andrew Carnegie.
Well, what are you saying? You're okay if nobody reads your book for 20 years?
No, I'm cool with it. No, actually, I am. Like, you know why? Because you know why? It's like, look at it like a vault. Look at the great Egyptian vaults, right? People didn't find them for 3,000, 4,000 years. And all of a sudden now they're in Smithsonian institutions and natural histories museums and all this different things. And people are awing and wooing and wowing how great this stuff is. And they're learning from it, right? I mean, that's just what happens sometimes to things that are just powerful things. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and even listen, if I was an influencer of some sort or something changes where now, hey, I go to people, hey, this is what you should check this out. It only takes a little drop in the pool. I have some things that I'm going to do for it, you know, to make sure that it actually works and wins for me. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Are you going to keep writing?
Oh yeah, I have one of my next books is called Credit Felon.
Okay.
Words of wisdom, financial wisdom from a guy you least expect it from.
Okay.
I went from a 535 credit score to a 709 in a year. Nice. Okay.
All right.
You know, like, so I got that book, then I have a few other ones, you know what I'm saying? That I'm going to.
So this won't be the last time we talk.
Oh, no. And then my autobiography is actually going to be called What's in the Duffel Bag.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if I want to know. Couple of pistols, I'm thinking, right?
Well, you got to read the book.
Okay. Thanks so much, Khoury. You have a great day.
No, you too. You have a better one.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Alejandro Gonzalez Arriaga has always walked his own creative path, but it hasn't been an easy one, and he shares his journey through the characters he brings to life in his book, Queen of the Disco.
So, Queen of the Disco is actually a story that I actually never intended to write, but due to like a lot of things I was going through, I looked over some old projects and I saw that I was going to delete them, but then I decided to myself, you know what? I invested so much time into making this one project for this one person I don't talk to anymore. I'm going to repurpose it. And so I talked to myself for a good while, looking back at all the mistakes and lessons that I've learned in my life when I was like around 25. And I look at the world around me and I saw like the world has its own problems. So I decided to make a story based on my own experiences and what I see in the world around me. So the story itself, it deals with some sensitive and serious topics that the world, well, at least that I feel the world isn't talking about as much, such as mental health, depression, suicide, and toxic relationships. And unfortunately for me, I have gone through some of those experiences.
Did something in particular happen to you that you talk about or that you used to write this story?
So prior to Queen of the Disco back in 2019, I remember hanging out with a couple of friends and we were out drinking and they asked me a question that they unintentionally opened a bottle of emotions I didn't even realize I was holding in. And so I remember that night almost committing a great mistake, and it's a mistake I'm glad I didn't go through, because if not, I wouldn't be here today.
What was the question?
What is your greatest failure ever?
And that unlocked a Pandora's box.
Yes. It started from there, but it didn't really kick off until 2021, that after a couple of friendships that I had ended due to a mistake I did. I look back in my life and I remember about that moment, and I remember about the good times I spent with some people that from then to that time I started to write the book. When I realized I had learned so many things that helped me grow as a person, and I see the world. I'm like, yeah, like the world isn't talking enough about these issues. Like I see the issues, but nobody else is bringing them up.
Right, right. So tell me how your story goes.
It is about a struggling musician whose name is Tristan Ayala. He deals with depression and low self-esteem.
So are you Tristan?
Yeah, the character Tristan is based off of me, and at one point I did try to learn how to play music, but it didn't exactly go well. So Tristan, he's trying to make it big in the city of LA. That's like the main, like that's one thing about Los Angeles. People come here to try and make it big. That means to be an actor and a writer, a director, anything that their heart desires.
Right.
But he struggles with that, even to the point that one of his friends see him struggling, and they see him like in a bad state, and so they decide to take him out to the most popular club in this place I called Club Del Rey in a city called Retro City.
Whoa. I like that. I'd like to go to Retro City.
Yeah, and Retro City is basically a redesigned Santa Monica. Like if you've ever been to Santa Monica, it's next to the beach, and if you look at the city at night, it has like this retro feeling. And when I seen pictures and I've gone through Santa Monica at night myself, that's when the idea started to hit me. Like, you know what? I could redesign this city into an 80s center point for 80s enthusiasts.
So what happens?
So what happens is that when they get to the club, that's when Tristan, the main character's life, changes forever. That's where he meets this young woman who is known as the Queen of the Disco. And it is from there that he takes a leap of faith and he gets to know the girl. And the girl in return gets to know him. Like both of them get to know each other in a deeper level, but eventually something happens and they see the dark side of each other as well. They see sides of each other that they never expected to see, such as Tristan's attitude, like his volatile attitude nature. And Tristan realizes about something about the Queen of the Discos, that she keeps secrets, or she's very vague about her own past. They try to overcome these issues and try to bring out the best of each other, like to work around it and to improve each other as a person. Something else happens to one of the characters. I won't say who, but that brings out another character to basically go out of their way and try to fix the problem themselves, even though the methods is actually quite unsavory.
Okay, so is it a friend of theirs who steps in to try to save their relationship?
Some of the main characters' friends do step in to try and help. And most important, they try to talk out one character from doing something that probably will be the worst mistake of their lives. But the character who goes through with it, he does not listen to them. Mainly when I was writing the book, I just wrote it in a way that I was expressing myself. I was expressing like everything that I felt, like from what I felt about mental health to depression to suicide to love and to other issues. So I guess you could say for the reader, I want them to know that I see the problem. You're not the only one who sees the problem. I see it too.
Does Tristan find his way through his problems?
Yes, as a matter of fact, throughout the entire story, it's kind of like a roller coaster. Like in the beginning of the book, we see Tristan at his lowest. But then as he meets the Queen of the Disco, that's when his life starts to go up, 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 and up. But then after a certain event, it goes down, and then things get better, it goes back up again. But then something really major happens and it goes all the way down. And from there, it's a battle for him to go back up.
It sounds like you were working through your issues. Like was this book therapeutic for you?
It actually was.
Yeah. So through writing, you found an outlet.
When I was writing the book originally, I didn't mean for it to like for me to express myself. But then as I was writing the book and I was going over the story, I realized that I was letting out things, emotions that I had bottled up in the last couple of years. From mistakes I learned to lessons, I just felt like this weight off my chest after I was done writing the book.
So where do we go from here?
Well, for one, my target is to reach out to an audience who will be interested in reading my book. That for me will be like the first step. But young adults and a much more mature audience.
Okay.
I've been promoting the book on my personal Instagram account, and I've been thinking about other ways of looking into the social media marketing.
All right. Did you enjoy the process?
Yeah, I actually did, from the editing process with Fulton Books to the cover art, to the cover design of the book, and to, well, the interview right now. It's actually quite been an exciting process.
Good. Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.